this is a business of unnecessary middle persons. You pay a percentage here, pay a percentage there. And I was always struck by something that Berry Gordy, the founder of Motown, said. It was some interview from like the 60s, and he was sort of giving a tour of Motown in Detroit. And he said, we make the music back there and we sell it out the front door. And that always resonated with me. Being in control of the means of production really resonated with me.
Welcome to the Vocal Lab. I'm Sarah Ramsey, and this show aims to pull back the curtain on the entertainment industry, where veterans give up-and-coming artists some of the information they wish they'd had when they were just starting out. Sort of a music industry primer, if you will. Thanks for joining us on the Vocal Lab. This is actually part 2 of our interview, so if you haven't caught part 1 yet, head back to the episode right before this one and get all caught up, and then join us back here. We'll see you soon. Do you want to talk a little bit about the ambient label? A lot of people, when they think about music careers, it's a much more sort of traditional route that looks at radio and that kind of commercial success. Ambient music isn't that. But I will tell you that I'm a person, hilariously enough, when I listen to music, probably 90% of what I listen to is like I listen to the Apple podcast, or not the Apple meditation curated playlist, because it's music that I can have on in the background when I'm working and like that. So I think that more and more people are listening to that kind of style of music. And I'm just interested to hear how that's developing. And
I think it's developing well. I mean, I've always been a fan of ambient and instrumental music, long before I had a job or a profession. Mm-hmm. For me, the introduction was through an artist producer named Brian Eno, who's a very well-known artist and producer who, probably best known for having been, one of the producers behind all the big U2 albums. The Talking Heads in the 70s, great producer, was in the band Roxy Music, the first couple of albums. And he made 3 or 4 pop albums after he left Roxy Music. And they're the kind of albums that not a lot of people bought. I mean, what's the old saying? 3,000 people bought the albums and all 3,000 of them started a band. Like super influential music, even though it wasn't, like who else, like the Velvet Underground, like bands like that who never in their natural lifespan necessarily had a lot of success, but influenced so many bands that you hear that influence in so much music. So Brian Eno at some point kind of veered into the more ambient stuff. He's got like that series Music for Airports, discrete music. And I really dug that stuff when I was like in university. And I think as I've gotten older, and a lot of it has to do with work, I've been listening to a lot more instrumental music. That includes classical. Yeah. That includes, what the common person would call, I guess, ambient. And it was very much a function of the fact that when I'm working, which is like all I do, because I'm a fucking loser who doesn't do anything but work, because I can't handle anything else about life other than work. Man, how's that for a little tangent? I don't know where that came from. But,
I think we just got our bumper.
But it's kind of true. You get these Spotify wraps at the end of the year, where Spotify tells you what you listen to. And, I'm like, I'll be damned. I listened to, the number one thing I listened to was Franz Schubert. Yeah. I'm like, that seems strange to me, because it's not like I'm sitting in my car going, I got to get me a Schubert fix. It's really more the fact that when I'm working, lyrics fuck me up.
Exactly.
I can't have lyrics in my brain or else I can't work. You try reading a contract and there's lyrics in the background, it's impossible. Yeah. So the pandemic only intensified that. I mean, I already spend a shockingly high number of hours alone in my office. It's kind of scary because I work late hours. I like it.
You work very bizarre hours.
Well, I mean, you know, I was a junkie. And so, you know, when I was a junkie, I used to stay up all night doing drugs, and I got over hard drugs over 40 years ago, but never really got over the hours.
Yeah.
And I think in a strange kind of way, my work is now my drug. That's what I'm like at night, I'm like, you know, in my office till 4 a.m, you know, and it's in a weird kind of way. It's almost like junkie life, but you know, it's in a more socially acceptable and lucrative fashion, which is good. Yeah. So I guess during the pandemic, it really got me thinking more about it. And I remember I was listening to a Spotify playlist, and I think it was called Deep Focus. And I was like, you know, I'd come into the office, you know, in the evening and be like, okay, well, it's just me and my computer again. What should I listen to tonight? And I would literally just search in Spotify, focus or study or work. And man, I'm like, Jesus Christ, there are so many fucking playlists that have that. And I'm looking a little more closely at these playlists going, my God, this playlist has 3 million followers. These songs have millions and millions. And I couldn't name a single one of these artists. And I was really fascinated by that, because when you work in the pop world or the rock world or the country world, so much of it is about marketing the personality of the artist. And the name of the artist. And I'm like, this is so fascinating that it's almost like the name of the artist is a second thought. You know, ambient music is about the mood it sets, not about the artist performing it. There aren't a lot of big ambient artists in the sense of like artists who everybody knows who they are. They've got like this huge following. That's not really the case the same way it is in pop and rock. It just isn't. And I was really fascinated by that. Like, man, like how interesting that I could focus here, not on marketing a personality, but on marketing a mood. I love that just conceptually. So I said, fuck it. Let's start doing it. Like, I want to experiment. I want to see what happens. And so far, so good. Like, it's a trickier world to maneuver in than I think I realized. I didn't think it was going to be easy, but I certainly didn't expect it to be, in certain respects, as hard as it is, because, you know, it's a bit of a mystery how those playlists get curated. And sometimes we get lucky. Like, we have a ambient artist named Yo-Yu. I'm going to give a plug, YOYU. And he put out a song fairly recently. And, you know, I have a person in Toronto who works for us, Julia, a little shout out, who is our sort of streaming service relations person. She's the one pitching on the front lines. She's the one going in there. She's the one who just set up a meeting with Mariana's Trench to, you know, talk to the head of Apple about their record. You know, it's been a bit of a mystery for us to figure it out. But like, you know, she sent me an email a couple of weeks ago going, man, this Yo-Yo track, I guess, got added to a Spotify or a Apple playlist. And it's like, you know, blowing up. Now, blowing up in the context of ambient doesn't mean the same thing as blowing up in a world of pop. But, you know, I think we're close to 400,000 streams, which I was stoked about. But it's a different world, and it's what I'm still navigating. And slowly but surely, I think we're getting where we want to go with it. And we're trying to do some other interesting things. For example, if you go to the Intraset, that's the name of the label. If you go to the Intraset YouTube channel, we've got one of those 24/7. It's just an animation of a cat on a roof with a playlist of music streaming with it. Because if anybody's ever seen Lo-Fi Girl, I don't know if you know that YouTube channel, but that was the thing that really got my brain sort of going, holy shit, like how did this happen? Lo-Fi Girl is a YouTube channel, and all they have on there are animations. And I'm not going to, hey, listen, I'm going to tell the truth. We copied them completely. I'm not going to, I mean, we didn't copy them in a infringing kind of way, but like conceptually, I'm like, man, like I love this idea. And the funny thing is when you look at the Lo-Fi Girl site, it'll be like an animation of a young woman studying. And it's only a 10-second animation that loops again and again and again. Mm-hmm. And then they have a live chat. And I'll be damned. Like at any moment in time, there's like 40,000 people on there.
Jesus.
And people chatting and saying the most banal kind of shit, like that has nothing to do with anything. And I am trying so hard to figure out how to capture that zeitgeist. Like how the hell do you capture that? So we're experimenting and it's fun. Yeah. So we've got what I just said. We've got one of those animations on there.
Yeah.
Not doing great, but again, we're trying to figure out how to make that work.
We'll link it in the show notes so y'all can find it easily.
Yes, I appreciate that. But we're doing other interesting things. So for example, we've started filming ambient concerts in our soundstage. Mm-hmm. And we've really outfitted our soundstage with like really cool projectors. So we can project like real trippy images. It kind of is a throwback. I mentioned the Velvet Underground earlier. There are some very early films that they did with Andy Warhol, where Warhol would shoot them performing, and it's chaos when you they're up online. You can find them. They're chaos when you look at them. But there was something I always found fascinating about that. I liked it. I'm like, man, like it's trippy and it's weird, and you kind of go, man, I don't even understand what I'm looking at, but I like that. Like I always thought, to me, that like sort of drew me in, and I'm trying to recreate that. And we've had a bunch of shows. We have one coming up in a couple of weeks with Stephen Hamm, who is a oh, good Lord. What's the instrument where you don't even touch it? Theremin.
The theremin?
He's a theremin player. I mean, I've known Ham for a million years.
There's not a lot of theremin players out there, I don't think.
There aren't. But I love the idea. And we're going to put up these incredibly trippy visuals. And, I'm trying to experiment and see, like, is that the kind of thing that's going to capture that audience? Is that the kind of thing that people are going to want to come and just kind of trip out and watch? And we'll see. But I love it. I love the music. I love experimenting in it. And we're definitely like going full tilt. And we've had a few successes. We've had some songs that have done really well. Colin Jans, who works here and runs our studio and also runs Intraset, he records under the name Tessit, and that's done well. His ambient project's done well. But you know who else does well is, I know you know him. I think you do. Do you know Jared Manierka?
Yes,
know who he is, but
at arm's length, yeah. Because
he's friends with your brother, and he was, funny enough, he's in the Shake Tramp video, and he's also in Carly Rae Jepsen's band, and we also rep him as a producer.
Did he play on Josh's solo tour?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Great guy, and he records under the name Let's Co, and that's done really well on there. So I love it, and I'm definitely tripling down on it.
Yeah. I read an article recently, and I wish I could remember where, because I don't have any idea where I came across this, but it was talking about that like this genre of music, and that like the best-selling artist of, I don't know, probably 2023 or whatever, was an ambient artist, but they had released under multiple different artist names.
Yeah, I think I read that too.
And so it was one person who had released under various project names.
And it's like a gazillion streams.
Exactly. Amongst all the different projects, they just cleaned up across the board. And because like you, I am in front of my computer, 1 million hours a day, roughly, give or take. Yep. And I can't have lyrics on when I do it. So I listen to either classical, or I always just choose meditation music. But now I'm going to go find some Intraset stuff to check out.
That would be great. Well, I mean, and we have some of our own like playlists. Like I know we've got one called Focus and Float that's doing well. But yeah, like I that's exactly how I sort of do that. Like when I come in at night and settle in for the night to do a bunch of work, I will sort of go, kind of what mood am I in, and like, how am I feeling? And, sometimes I can't get stuff that's too mellow because I still need to be kind of stimulated, just not lyrically. I still need the sort of uplift of some of that music to sort of keep me going at 3:30 in the morning when I'm like, oh, I should just go home. But, I'll have some music on that just kind of keeps me powering through.
Weirdly enough, the one kind of music that I can listen to that, I mean, technically it does have lyrics, is chant, like Gregorian chant type music.
Sure.
There's an artist, Diva Premal, I think is her name, because it's just so repetitive. It's one lyric for the entire song.
Yeah, and I should say I can listen to opera because it's in Italian and it might as well be a guitar solo because I don't understand it.
Yeah.
It doesn't engage my brain in that way. And then I'm sort of free to use my brain for language on what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I know that technically we are a music show here, but do you want to talk a little bit about the Comedy Network? Because I know that that's been a big jumping off point for the label too, a big development there.
Sure. So this all sort of started, the Comedy Here Often imprint started about 6-7 years ago. And it was the result really of a producer here named Kevy, who is also in a band called Fake Shark, who does well on Light Organ, which is another one of our imprints.
We had him on the show a couple weeks ago.
Oh, right. That's right. I think just as almost like a side hustle, like a side gig, he's a big fan of comedy, and he was recording a lot of albums for local comedians. They'd want to record an album at, some comedy club, and they'd call Kevy and he'd come and record it, and did a very good job. He's actually recorded multiple Juno Award-winning comedy albums. And, he would be working in the studio right next to where we're recording this. And, I'd come in there and just say, hey, what are you working on? And, I'm working on this comedy album. And I was fascinated by it. I mean, that's just the way my brain is. I'm always like looking at things as like, gee, is there an opportunity for us? And I remember just sort of saying, like, what do these comedians do with these records? Okay, so you record it. What do they do with it? What happens? He's like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, what do they do with it? They've paid you a bunch of money to make a record. It's a nice record. So then what? It's like, well, I guess they put it up on Spotify. And then maybe they press some CDs if they're going to go on a tour so that they can sell CDs at the show. And I'm like, and he's like, that's it.
Yeah.
I said, well, man, like, I wonder why there isn't more money put into this by labels. And I wonder why, then I started to do some research. And I'm like, well, man, like, not only do labels not put money into that sort of thing, there isn't even a Juno Award anymore. They stopped doing that. The last record to get a Juno Award for comedy was Bob and Doug McKenzie.
Oh my God.
How long ago was that? Like, yeah, exactly. So 20 years ago. And I thought, how strange. So, I remember I flew out when I was running it through my brain going, man, should I get involved in this or not? I flew out to Toronto to meet with guys who run Sirius XM comedy stuff. Great guy named Ben Miner and a guy named Joe Thistle who recently left Sirius. And I remember sitting down with them, sort of introduced myself and said, listen, I'm really thinking about getting into this in a real way, putting some real marketing money into these comedy records. And they both looked at me like I was a fucking Martian. Like, what? You're going to put money into this? I said, well, yeah. I mean, how else do you expect to make money if you're not letting people? And they were so supportive and so shocked. And one of the first things I did was advocate for that comedy Juno to come back. And I'm not going to take all the credit because I was not the only one doing it. But I was one of the people leading the charge there to say, this is idiotic that there's no a comedy award. And now there is again, which I'm really proud of. I've learned a lot of lessons in the relatively short period of time that label's been around. Number one, nobody streams comedy on Spotify or Apple or Amazon. They just don't. They want a visual. People will go to YouTube and watch comedy. People will watch a comedy film. People will go to Netflix and stream a comedy special. The one thing they won't do is just go to Spotify and listen to, a comedy album. The other thing I've learned from the record label perspective, the money is in Sound Exchange. Now, we were talking about Sound Exchange earlier. There's a great example. Sound Exchange, again, is the money paid for airplay on Sirius XM. And that is where most comedy is played because they have 4, 5, 6 comedy channels.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
There's Comedy Club, the new one in Canada. There's Raw Dog. There's a million of them. Well, Well, there's not a million of them, but there's 5 or 6 of them. And if you're lucky enough to get your comedy stuff played on one of those channels, it can be significant amounts of money. Like we've had records that generated, $14 on Spotify and 75 grand in sound exchange royalties just because they pay. The pay is ridiculous.
Vastly different.
Yeah. So, but I didn't get into it for sound exchange. I didn't even know when I started it. I just love comedy and it just seemed like, hey, like that's been my career. I just, somebody tells me here's something you shouldn't get involved with. And then I get involved with it. And I take that stuff as a challenge. It's like, oh yeah, you have to really be, in that world. And I'm like, oh yeah, watch this. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud that we've done well with that. And now we've branched out. We're doing a lot more like touring. I don't know when this is going to go live, but by then we will have already announced that we're putting on a nationwide comedy tour that is literally going coast to coast. The headliners are John Doerr and Dave Merhesh. And then in each city, we will have locals hosting and opening. It's something we're doing with SiriusXM. They are sponsoring it. They've been lovely to us. And I guess as part of their CRTC license, they are obligated to spend money on Canadian comedy. And they approached us and said, we'd love to do this with you. So it's a tour we're doing with them. 1 or 2 of the shows will be recorded, and then Sirius is actually going to broadcast the shows no more than 5 times.
Yeah.
And what a lovely opportunity for us on so many different levels. So I'm really excited about doing that.
Yeah.
And I've got a couple of other irons in the fire on the comedy side, and I don't want to say too much about it, but a lot of it is results from the fact that, Just for Laughs went bankrupt. And that's left a real hole in the comedy world. And so that's a void I'm really hoping to step into in a pretty big way in the coming months. But I love it. It's fun. We do a regular comedy show right here at 604 in the soundstage. In the summer, it's going to go back to just once a month.
Oh, once a month.
In the winter, it's twice a month.
Got it.
The second and last Friday of each month. But it's really amazing. We do it in our soundstage. We film it. We record it. We get great content out of it. And it's a gas.
That's super cool. Is it live? Like you have live studio audience or?
Live studio audience. We sell tickets, usually sells out, usually pays for the comics. We sell booze. It's fun. It's become a bit of we have fans of it who show up all the time. But for me, of course, it's about the content.
Yeah. I think that is a super cool thing. And I mean, I know that the people who are listening to the show have not seen the 604 headquarters here, but it's a very cool building with lots of different uses, different studios and offices and soundstage and lots of different places within the building. And I think it's a super cool way to utilize the soundstage.
I mean, to me, it seemed like common sense to do it and I have to thank Carly and your brother and Tavish Crow. It's a success of Call Me Maybe that really enabled me. Like I always had this idea and this building is very much a direct reaction to my distaste for, major labels. And like, this is a business of unnecessary middle persons. You pay a percentage here, pay a percentage there. And I was always struck by something that Berry Gordy, the founder of Motown, said. It was some interview from like the 60s, and he was sort of giving a tour of Motown in Detroit. And he said, we make the music back there and we sell it out the front door. And that always resonated with me. Being in control of the means of production really resonated with me. And when I built it, the music industry, that was 2013, I guess, when I started to build it. The music industry was about in the shitter as much as it's ever been.
Yeah.
And I know there were a lot of people who thought I was nuts. Like, why would you? And I was trying to explain, well, no, the whole point is, yes, the music business is in the shitter. So if I can find a way to create tons of content without spending tons of money and good content, then doesn't that put us ahead of the game, ahead of the curve? And again, some people got it, some people didn't. Now I think it's funny, now everybody's copying us, like Universal's built a facility that's got a studio.
Have they?
I mean, Dine Alone did it in Toronto, but at least Dine Alone had the decency. Joel, who I love, who runs Dine Alone, called me and basically said, yeah, man, I think we're going to build something like you built.
Yeah.
And I said, well, where are you doing that? And he said, Toronto. I said, fuck, I don't care. Like, just stay out of my city. And I don't, I got a problem with that. And he actually flew out and looked at what we did and then sort of incorporated a bit of that into their building. And I remember actually there was a Globe and Mail interview about the building when we opened, and your brother was interviewed in it. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget what he said, which I loved. I loved what she said, the interviewer said something like, did you think he was kind of nuts to do this? And your brother's like, no, not at all. Like, I have nothing but respect for somebody who's going to commit to their vision of their business or, something like that, which was like, I really appreciated that because from a lot of people I was getting not pushback, but like even
incredulity,
a little bit of people going, are you sure that's how you, because honestly, I took all the Call Me Maybe money to buy this building and build it. Like it was a risk.
Yeah.
I mean, in Vancouver, and you buy real estate, I mean, I guess on some level, it's not the biggest risk.
Mitigated risk.
Yeah. But still, I mean, we bought the building. We got very lucky. We're in an area called Strathcona Railtown. But at the time we bought it, I believe the neighborhood was just known as Shit Town. And I say that without trying to disparage the people, the sort of, the community native to here. Yeah. Cause it's a bit sad. Like it's a lot of poor people, and a lot of junkies and a lot of, people on the lower end of the socioeconomic scale. But the irony of it all is when I was a junkie, a high school junkie, does that sound familiar? Anybody in your family?
I believe that is territory we have navigated.
So when I was, a middle class high school junkie and I needed to try and figure out a way to score drugs that even people in my high school weren't using, I'd come down here. I'd come down to this neighborhood. In fact, if you could see through the building that's right next to our building, you'd see the hotel where I usst to score drugs, the Astoria Hotel, where I used to come in high school to score drugs. And I used to do drugs down here too. Then I got in trouble with the law, which was the best thing that ever happened to me. And then I went to law school and became a poverty lawyer. And guess where all my clients were? Right here. And guess where I used to go to court all the time? 222 Main Street, just up the street. So, then here we are all these years later, and I've started a business here. It's just funny how this part of town has played such a weird and continuous role in my life now for literally over 40 years.
Yeah.
But I love this part of town. I really do. We're so close to the water. I mean, it's an industrial area, but there are times at night, if I'm feeling stressed out, I just take a walk and, that's just something I love about Vancouver. It almost doesn't matter where you live in this city. You're probably no more than a 15-minute drive to water.
Yes.
And I'm not an outdoorsy guy. Like, I don't like camping. In fact, I hate camping. I don't understand camping. I never have, and I never will. We've invented beds. We can sleep in a bed. We've invented air conditioning. We can turn on the air conditioning. We don't have to sleep on a shitty, anyways, no disrespect to people who like camping. I'm not one of those people. But in Vancouver, you don't have to be one of those people to appreciate, the natural beauty of this place. When I lived in Toronto, which I did for 7 or 8 years, if I felt like the world was too much or I was feeling overwhelmed with work or with personal issues, you disappear into your apartment. That's the only way to escape in Toronto, inwards. Or you can sit on a highway for 2.5 hours and go to your cottage. But for most people who don't even have a cottage, you escape inwards. Vancouver, that sense of visual escape is so massive for me. I mean, you look out your window and there's those mountains and it just kind of transports you mentally. It's something I love very, very much about the city. You don't have to be somebody who's into camping or hiking to really get the benefits of the natural beauty of this place.
Yeah, agreed. I lived in England for a short period of time in about 2003, and we lived smack dab in the middle of the country, and there was no water visible. And we used to, I remember we got in the car one weekend and I said, I don't care where we go. It just needs to be on the coast.
Yeah.
Because I need to see the water.
100%.
And because I grew up in Vancouver and fourth generation Vancouverite, and that ability to just see the water, like you say, at a stone's throw.
You grew up on Acadia, right?
Yeah.
Or no? Yeah. So, that's a part of town.
We moved to that house when I was 9. We were in West Van before that.
But still, yeah. West Van as well. Those are both areas that aren't just close to the water, but beautiful sort of like cliffs and, the sort of the best of sort of what this city has to offer in terms of that visual sort of escape. And, I love Toronto. I'm not one of those Vancouverites who hates Toronto. For me, it was where I became the person I am. Mm-hmm. All my firsts, I first job, first time living alone, lost my virginity, like you name it, like all the firsts of life that are, the most important ones. That's kind of where it happens. Yeah. First time I sort of made like real friends, because before that I was just a drug addict and increasingly losing touch with, other human beings. And I kind of reestablished that in Toronto. But that was ultimately why I had to come home. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember people would say like, do you think you see yourself living in Toronto? I said, yeah, but there's only one place I can see myself dying, and that's Vancouver. Mm-hmm. And I mean that.
I don't think I could settle in another, city that would, I don't know that for me that it has to be Vancouver, but at least like, water, Southwest BC on the coast.
Yeah, and I think that too sometimes. Like I've thought, I can get very end of the world about things sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but there are times I'm like, fuck, I should buy a plot of land, like, north of Whistler, build a compound, have a generator, have a way of planting food. Mm-hmm. Like sometimes people say to me, you're such a workaholic. Like, what are you trying to achieve? And what I usually say is, well, I'm building a fort. I'm building a fort for my family. That's what I'm trying to achieve. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to achieve a situation where my children I know are going to always be okay. My family's always going to be okay. And that's kind of what I'm doing. So, but yeah, I agree. I would only do it in BC, whatever I end up doing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this city's in my blood. And I guess when you grow up here, it just kind of gets in your blood. Yeah.
Well, we have really, meandered around.
It's the lack of sleep. I apologize. It's true. I'm not somebody who I tend to go off on tangents at the best of times, but if I haven't slept, it's much more pronounced. And so I'm sorry if I got a little too all over the place with everything, but hopefully there's some tidbits here, and hopefully I didn't offend anybody, or if I did, hopefully they deserve to be offended. I was going to slag your brother because I was saying before we started, I think I had texted him earlier saying, hey, I'm on your sister's podcast. Is it cool if I slag you and say horrible things about you? And he didn't respond. So I said, I'll take that as a yes. And then he finally responded and said, all good. So, but I don't really have anything shitty to say about him. I was going to say,
so do you need like 5 minutes to wrap up at the end with a Josh runway here?
Well, I was going to be like, he thinks he's such a good songwriter, but like he kind of is.
He kind of is.
I can't really slag him on that.
Yeah, he thinks he's such a fucking good singer.
But he kind of is.
He kind of is.
Okay, fuck that. Fuck it. No. Listen, I have a very long relationship with your brother. We've been through a lot of ups and downs together. Mm-hmm. We've done just about everything except have sex, and who knows, maybe that's coming. But
if it is, I don't want you to talk about it on this show.
Okay, fair enough. No, I don't. I don't.
have some boundaries.
Yeah, some boundaries.
Not many, but some.
Your brother's sex life might be one of them.
Well, especially his sex life with you.
With me, right? Yeah. Okay.
I'm gonna put a hard no on.
No, I think I'm gonna put a hard no on it as well. But no, this is fun. It's always fun hanging out, and it's not just Josh I've known forever. You and your family I've also known forever, and that includes both your parents, rest in peace, who, especially your mom, I was quite close with because she trained like pretty much like every musician that we ever signed. And now you've kind of stepped into that role, which I love. In fact, just hooked you up with one of our new signings, which, I'll give her a plug too. Frances Whitney, who's a great new artist that we signed, who's starting to do quite well. And I love that. I mean, there's something to really be said for long relationships. And, there aren't a lot of them in the music business. People tend to get mad or get offended or something doesn't work out. They just like to point fingers at people and move on. And, Nickelback, Mariana's Trench, those are suddenly decades long relationships, and there's really nothing like it in the music business. I feel really proud and sort of honored to have that kind of long relationship with those artists.
Yeah. Well, and I think that it's it is a standout thing to me that you do have those kind of long-standing. I said something to Josh. I don't even remember the context for it recently, but I said like when you're one of Jonathan's people, you're one of his people for the long haul. You have a real sense of loyalty.
I do,
and that is one of the things I very much appreciate about you.
I appreciate that you saying that. It's funny though, because in this business that has hurt me sometimes as well as. Because it's not a business that tends to inspire loyalty with people. And, it's funny, like sometimes people say to me like, how do you explain Nickelback's longevity? Like, and I always say like, I think it's two things. Whether you like them or not, they write catchy fucking songs and they're loyal to their people.
Yeah.
Like I've been with them for 30 years. 30 years I've been their lawyer. 30 years. Time. And when they won that Juno this year for the Hall of Fame Award, and Chad goes up on stage, and who does he thank? I want to thank my parents. And he sort of points them out. I want to thank my parents for producing half of the band, as he puts his arm around his brother. Great line. John Simkin. Like he looks right at the camera. John Simkin, our lawyer, was here from the beginning when nobody else would touch us with a 10-foot pole. He was here from the start. I was just like, and I'm not very sentimental guy, and I'm not one who generally likes award shows, but I teared up and it was just because it said so much about them. And then who's the very next person he thanks? Ralph James, or like these people who've been with them for 30 years. And I really do believe, because I don't know what it is about this fucking business, but like people treat it like it's somehow different from every other business. Well, guess what? It really isn't. Like having a hit record doesn't give you a right to be a fucking asshole. Yet a lot of people think it does. And I've never understood that or that like, look, we could be producing widgets. We could be producing peanuts. Like, well, it turns out we produce art, and I love that. And I feel honored and thankful for the trust that artists put in me. But on some other level, it is just a business. Like, and I like to say that I say it to the staff all the time, like, keep your feet on the ground here. Like we're not curing cancer. We're doing something good and valuable, but when you start to get carried away with yourself or carried away with what we're doing, or I just think that's a recipe for disaster. But sometimes I've been loyal to a fault in the sense that, something doesn't work out and you still double down again. It's like, okay, sure. I'm going to do a fourth record with this artist who hasn't sold a single record because I have trouble. I'm like a pit bull. Like I'll chomp down on a project and then I refuse to let go until the thing works. I mean, even Mariana's Trench, like that first record didn't do that well. Like we were convinced those songs were going to get in the radio and they didn't.
Yeah.
Why? Because the pop stations thought it was too rock and the rock stations thought it was too pop. And we were caught in this weird in between. And there was a moment in time where we had recorded the second album, but hadn't put it out, where the band was unrecouped to us. I mean, I guess I can talk about it. Like the band was unrecouped to us, like probably $400,000. Now, if they had been on a major label who have zero loyalty to anybody but their bank account, they would have been dumped. Like it would have been over when the second single didn't work. But I believed. I said, God damn it, I know that there's an audience. And boy, was I proven right. Yeah. I mean, they've been recouped in a big way for probably a decade now. So I wish there was more of that kind of commitment in this business.
Yeah.
And there are people like that. I think Joel at Dynalone is very loyal. He's been with like Alexis on Fire and City and Color for 100 years.
Yeah.
There is that. But unfortunately, for a lot of the business, there really isn't. And I get that. Like, it is a business. And if you are a publicly traded company, you've got shareholders. And that's why, I have not sold the company, even though we've had some great offers. Like during the pandemic, we had a couple of really tempting offers to sell the company. But the problem is they always want me to stay on. Well, you're going to have to stay on for 6 years. 6 years of having a bean counter looking over my shoulder. They would have made me dump Mariana's Trench after the first album. Like, no way was I going to do that. It cuts against everything I am. And so many of the risks I've taken, I wouldn't have been able to take. Anyways, thank you so much. This was fun. It's always fun talking to you. And I don't know, hopefully the people out there listening don't think I'm completely insane. I am a bit crazy. Everybody knows that. I know that. It's not like it's a secret or that I'm not aware of it, but I think it's good crazy.
I think it's good crazy too. And I appreciate you coming and hanging out with me, even though you've only had 3.5 hours sleep.
Well, you know what? It was easy because it's in my own building, for God's sake. And now I can go upstairs and be a workaholic and reestablish my equilibrium. But thank you so much. And maybe we'll have a third installment at some point.
There you go. Season 3.
If you can ever convince your brother to come on, maybe I'll come on with him.
There you go.
Yeah. We just will talk about our love life together. Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Okay.